The morning Brenda Kilpatrick lit a match to my great-grandfather's corn barn. She thought she was removing an eyesore. In her mind, it was just a decaying structure, a blemish on the manicured lawns and matching rooftops of Milfield Estates. What she didn't realize was that she wasn't just burning wood and nails, she was igniting a war. She was setting fire to 70 years of my family's blood, sweat, and legacy. And she was challenging a man she thought was finished. At 5:47 a.m., I stood in the ashes, boots grinding against charred timber that still radiated warmth. The air was thick with the acrid taste of scorched oak diesel fuel, century-old corn dust that clung to the back of my throat like judgment itself. The barn wasn't just a building, it was the altar of my family's history and the centerpiece of her downfall. Brenda thought she was dealing with some harmless old man, a retired judge she could bully into compliance. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly understand, was that she had just delivered me the kind of case I lived for. A case so airtight it would not only bring her down but also unravel the web of corruption she and her allies had spun through this county for years. I am Thaddeus Brennan, and for nearly 3 decades, I was a federal judge who specialized in tearing apart corruption. I sent entire county commissions to prison. I dismantled networks of officials who abused their power for profit. And though I thought I had retired, fate had just put another case on my desk. To understand why this barn mattered, you need to know who built it. My grandfather, Seamus Brennan, arrived from County Cork, Ireland, in 1948. He came with nothing but a Purple Heart in his pocket, shrapnel still buried in his leg, and hands that knew how to make things that outlasted storms, winters, and men. In 1952, those hands raised that barn from Iowa soil. Yes. Every beam was cut from solid oak. Every joint was carved so tight you couldn't slide a dime between them. For 70 years it stood tall through blizzards and droughts, its weathered walls infused with the sweet perfume of dried corn and the faint, lingering ghost of Seamus's pipe tobacco. It was more than a barn, with scripture written in timber, Proverbs 13:22 made visible. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children. As children, that barn was my inheritance. A legacy not measured in money, but in permanence. No. And Brenda set it aflame for the sake of property values. 3 years ago, after watching my wife Margaret lose her battle with cancer, I thought I was finished with the courts, finished with the weight of the gavel. I left Chicago and came home to Milfield County, Iowa, settling on the 47 acres Seamus left me. I imagined retirement would mean restoring tractors, planting corn, and listening to the silence you only get when your nearest neighbor is a quarter-mile away. But silence is fragile. In my case, silence lasted just long enough for the HOA Queen of Milfield Estates to decide I was a threat to her empire. If you've never met a woman like Brenda Kilpatrick, count yourself blessed. She was 5'6" of sharpened ambition, wrapped in cream-colored business suits that cost more than the monthly mortgage of most of her neighbors. Her pristine white Mercedes gleamed as much as her bleached smile, and her heels, those stiletto heels, clicked on pavement with the precision of a ticking clock, announcing her approach like a countdown to judgment. Tick, tick, tick. She ran Milfield Estates not as a community but as a kingdom. She weaponized conformity and wielded bylaws like swords. She sold real estate by day, convincing young families to sign contracts that gave her dominion over every inch of their property, from the shade of their shutters to the LHE of their grass. Her husband Randy ran the largest construction company in the county. Together they controlled permits, contracts, and influence like a modern feudal dynasty. In the center of their empire, my 47 acres, smack in the middle. Untouched, exempt, a thorn in her carefully manicured side. What Brenda never realized was that Seamus had been wise. Back when developers first dreamed of carving Iowa farmland into suburban tracts, he secured agricultural exemptions and mineral rights that placed my land forever outside HOA jurisdiction. Legally, Brenda had as much authority over my barn as she did over the moon. But arrogance blinds. And Brenda was nothing if not arrogant. Her first royal visit came on a crisp September morning. I was coaxing my grandfather's old John Deere back to life, elbow deep in the carburetor, when I heard the sharp staccato of her heels firing down my gravel driveway like mortar rounds. "Mr. Brennan," she called. Her voice was smooth, honey poured over razor wire. I'm Brenda Kilpatrick, HOA President. We need to discuss your agricultural structures. She stood before me, immaculate in her cream suit. Clipboard clutched like scripture, staring at my freshly painted red barn as though it personally insulted her bloodline. The morning sun made those walls glow like a cathedral, an icon of American heritage she couldn't control. "Ma'am," I said, wiping grease from my hands, "that barn has been here since 1952. It's grandfathered in long before your development was even a line on a blueprint." Her smile tightened. "Mr. Brennan, property values depend on maintaining certain aesthetic standards. That eyesore is visible from 17 homes. Frankly, it's destroying everyone's investment." The diesel rumbled steady behind me. The air smelled of autumn harvest, and I tasted the edge of a fight. "I understand your concern," I replied. "This is private agricultural property. Your HOA has zero jurisdiction here." That was the moment her mask dropped. Her eyes went flat, cold as a shark's. Her voice lowered, soft but dripping with menace. "Mr. Brennan, there are many creative solutions to problems that affect our community's prosperity. I do hope you won't force us to explore them." Something in her tone set off alarms in my head. I'd heard that cadence before in courtrooms, from defendants who thought intimidation was a strategy. My instincts screamed. Brenda wasn't finished. She was just getting started. Exactly 1 week later, Milfield County's code enforcement officer, Dale Hoffman, pulled up in a county truck that looked like it had survived Vietnam. His hands shook around a clipboard thick enough to stop bullets. "Mr. Brennan," he stammered, "I've got some complaints here about potential violations on your property." I set down my coffee mug. The one that said I survived 27 years of federal court, and all I got was this lousy retirement, and walked toward him. The October air bit sharp, and Dale looked like a man walking to his own execution. "What kind of violations?" he asked. He flipped pages with trembling fingers. "Noise ordinances, dust control, potential rodent harboring, proper equipment storage, septic concerns, environmental hazards." His voice shrank with every accusation. "How many complaints this week?" I asked. His Adam's apple bobbed. 14 anonymous complaints in 7 days, all against a farm that had stood untouched since Eisenhower." "Dale," I said evenly, "who's pressuring you?" He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder like snipers might be in my cornfield. Then he pulled out his phone. A voicemail transcript glowed on the screen. "Dale," the voice said, "this is Brenda Kilpatrick. The Brennan situation requires immediate and comprehensive attention. I trust you understand the importance of maintaining community standards. Randy's company has several county projects coming up for bid. We value cooperative officials." She had just handed me a smoking gun with her fingerprints all over it. "Dale," I said, "quick legal education. Iowa Code, Chapter 352, the Right to Farm Act. It prohibits harassment of agricultural operations that existed before surrounding development. Every complaint you just read falls under nuisance ordinances, which means every single one is illegal." His face drained white. "You mean I'm being used?" I finished. "You're being turned into an accomplice in official misconduct. But you don't have to be. File your report honestly. Document what you see. Follow the law, not her orders." He swallowed hard. For 30 minutes he photographed barns, tractors, and farm tools that had been here since Truman was in office. Son his ass out, because this was no longer a neighborhood dispute. This was the beginning of a federal case. 10 days later, a process server delivered legal papers thick enough to be a novel. Brenda's lawyers were suing me for $50,000 in damages and demanding demolition of my barn, citing structural danger, vermin attraction, and even, God help me, potential terrorist concealment opportunities. Yes, according to Brenda's lawyers, my grandfather's corn barn was a terrorist hideout. The firm on the letterhead wasn't local. Hawthorne Sterling and Associates. a Des Moines powerhouse that billed $800 an hour. Someone was betting the farm literally on breaking me. But Brenda's arrogance had revealed her true plan. This wasn't about an eyesore. Over the past 18 months, 3 shell companies had purchased every parcel of farmland within 2 miles of Milfield Estates. The purchasing agent, Kilpatrick Development Solutions, LLC. The registered address, Randy's construction office. They weren't defending property values. They were assembling a 1,000-acre empire, and my land sat like a stubborn splinter in the middle. She thought she could buy me out or burn me out. What she didn't count on was me calling in reinforcements. My former law clerk, Michael Chen, was now one of Chicago's most feared civil rights attorneys. When I explained the lawsuit, he didn't even let me finish before laughing. "Judge Brennan, this is Christmas in September," he said. "We'll file a motion to dismiss for lack of standing, and then hit them with a Section 1983 countersuit. If they're abusing county resources under color of law, they can be sued personally. No immunity. They'll pay damages out of their own pockets." Within 72 hours, the papers were filed. The battlefield had shifted. Then came the call from Special Agent Sarah Kowalski. "Judge," she said, "your HOA problem just became a federal priority. You've been tracking land fraud operations across 6 counties. Elderly farmers, veterans, minorities, pressured with complaints, lawsuits, forced sales. It's a pattern." And Brenda Kilpatrick just lit herself up like a beacon. That was when I knew this wasn't just personal. It was systemic. And it was going down. By the time I parked my old pickup, rusted, dented, and proudly bearing a Vietnam veteran bumper sticker in front of Brenda S.'s pristine house in Milfield Estates, the war was already won. She didn't know it yet, but her empire was collapsing. Behind the HOA bylaws and the white fences, her entire operation was built on intimidation, arrogance, and fraud. And now it was being dismantled, piece by piece, by the very man she thought was powerless. Her mistake was thinking she had burned down my barn. The truth was, she had lit a signal fire. A fire that called justice out of retirement. A fire that revealed every shadow she thought would stay hidden. And when the smoke cleared, only one truth remained. Some barns hold more than corn. They hold legacies. And some legacies burn hotter than any match. Corruption thrives where people are silent. Brenda believed she could bully, bribe, and burn her way to an empire. But Proverbs 21:15 says, "When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers." She learned that firsthand. And if you're listening right now, ask yourself, who is the Brenda in your life? Who's trying to strip away what's yours under the disguise of authority? You may not be a federal judge, but you don't need a gavel to stand up for truth. Because when you fight with honesty, with courage, and with the law on your side, corruption always burns itself to the ground.